Still June 23rd, 2022, and I'm still Larissa. And we're going to read a little bit more here from Patent Leather Jean. But first, I want to talk about my garments. And so this is one of my recycled jackets. And it's the first one that I made and I added, it has a little floofy, it's a little longer. All the other ones I've made are little jackets with a pocket. And this is, I used a piece of a Nepalese skirt. So on this one, but then all of the other rest of the fabric is yardage that I made, patchwork yardage that I made out of scraps and other fabrics that I was upcycling or had left over from other projects. So there's that. And this top I'm wearing just looks like a t-shirt, because it is. A little fancy though. It's got a doily on the back, an antique doily. And this t-shirt I made out of a t-shirt dress. I didn't just cut the bottom off though. It was a big kind of like tented jersey knit dress. And it had some stains and a couple holes in it. It was ready to be recycled. And so I made this little t-shirt and I put a little doily on the back to make it cute. And I had linen pants on too that I made. Okay, so these are just simple linen pants. And I made the pattern for those pants from a pair of pants that I had that I really, really liked and that I had worn to death. They needed to be, I had to take them apart. So I took the pants apart, and the original pair of pants had pockets. My pattern does not. But I made a pattern from those pants, and I adapted it and changed it, so it's not exactly the same. But it fits and it's comfortable, and like I said, I really, really love linen. Then these are earrings that I made, and this is from a series that I did in, was it 2005, I think, called Rock Candy. No, Eye Candy. It was called Eye Candy. There were rings and everything. Anyway, this is recycled plexiglass. So I used to, collect scraps of plastics and things. And I polished them, made these little components, and these are sterling silver ear wire. This style of ear wire is generally called a Tibetan ear hook. I don't know why. I guess earrings from Tibet. I don't know. Somebody just made that shit up. I don't know. But that's what they're called. But I made them. So it's just another example of upcycling, recycling, and it's a real comfy, just kind of cardigan. Right? Trying to control how much textile ends up in the landfill, because fast fashion and cultural icons, fashion icons in particular, right? And you talk about women with their fake boobs and their fake bums and all of that stuff, and their disposable designer clothes and all of that stuff are destroying the planet. And it's not just women, it's men too. And so I like clothes. I like, and I like making them, but I would like to do that, without hurting the planet, right? Right? It's like my nails, right? So my fingernails are not acrylic. They're not gel. They are polished, but they are reinforced with silk. I have silk wrap nails, and I do that. It's really hard to find anybody who does it anymore, right? But the reason I wear silk nails is because I like to have manicured hands, right? But I don't want plastic. Or I'd like to avoid plastic when at all possible. And so these are wrapped with all natural things. Very fine, my nails are wrapped with a very fine silk, and then the nail glue is added to the silk to hold it on, and that glue is made out of animal hooves. Like super glue. So it's all natural. Polish is another story altogether. But anyway, my nail polish is Vinylux. Vinylux. So, Patent Leather Jean, 2020 Lenten Season Novella, an original work of fiction by Larissa Dahroug. Me. Chapter 6, Dehydrated Crocodile Tears. Robin's eyes fluttered open, and he found himself still on the couch with a blanket neatly tucked around him and his pillow from the bed under his head. There were 3 empty beer bottles on the coffee table next to a tall glass of water. He could hear Jean in the kitchen bumping around. The morning sunlight danced across the dining table just beyond the sitting room. He sat up, rubbing his face, neck, and head. Jean entered the room, balancing a plate of scrambled eggs and toast and a cup of coffee, and sat it on the table in front of him. "Well, good morning, lumberjack." Jean smiled at her husband as he rubbed the sleep from his face with the palms of his hands. "Why am I on the couch?" Robin looked at the empty beers. He remembered drinking them. He didn't think he was that drunk. "After the game, we watched the news and had a couple more beers, and you fell asleep. I tried to wake you to get you to come up the stairs, but you were dead to the world," Jean informed him, pushing the plate of eggs toward him and heading back toward the kitchen to get her plate and cup to join him. Robin picked up his coffee and took a sip, then picked up his plate and headed to the dining table. "Let's eat at the table," he said to Jean through the breeze-through window between the dining room and kitchen. "Okay," Jean replied, sitting her plate on her seat, or at her seat. "You want some ketchup for your eggs?" she asked him as she turned back toward the refrigerator. "Yeah, and do we have any OJ?" He got up to get the juice glasses. "No, but we have some crayon apple. You want that?" Jean grabbed the ketchup and the juice and made her way to the table. Robin grabbed 2 glasses from the cupboard and sat down next to his wife. Yeah, but pick up some OJ later if you go out." Robin poured himself some juice and took a sip before digging into his eggs. Jean pushed her eggs around on her plate before taking a bite. "If I go out later, I hope you'll come with me. I was thinking we'd go out to dinner tonight." Jean looked at her husband hopefully. "Okay." "Man, I was tired." "You must have been. I couldn't even get you to move, and you were snoring like a chainsaw, so I just brought your pillow down and covered you up." Jean took a bite of her toast, watching Robin switch his fork and knife in his hands. "I'm still tired, and I'm going to have to call Joan today," Robin sighed. "Joan? Since when are you and your mother on a first-name basis?" Jean raised her eyebrows as she spoke. "I've been calling her Joan to myself for a couple of years now, but after that last message and the bullshit she pulled at our door last night, I think I'm going to start calling her Joan to her face." Robin turned down the corners of his mouth in disapproval. "She left a message on the landline here yesterday, too. I just remembered. I haven't listened to it yet." "Shall we?" Jean offered. Can I finish my breakfast first? I was enjoying it." Robin smiled at Jean and patted her hand resting on the table between them. Jean got up and grabbed the tea towel hanging on the oven door to wipe off the dining table where she had dribbled some juice. She sat the red towel in the center of the table as she finished her eggs, and Robin touched the corner of the towel. "You said Pat brought a tea towel back yesterday?" "Yeah, why?" "How do you know it was him?" "Did Connor bring it back?" "I'm pretty sure it's Pat on the camera yesterday morning. He walked by not long before the camera went out at 9 a.m. Can I see it? Was there a knock this morning?" Robin had a look on his face like he was thinking really hard about something. "Yeah, you can see it. I wish you'd install the app on your phone so you can see it any time like me. And no, magically, there was no knock this morning. It would have woken you up if there had been. Whoever it is probably saw you're home." Jean got up and grabbed her cell phone from the kitchen counter where it had been charging and brought it over to the table. She opened the camera company's app and brought up the video from the morning before. At 8:56 a.m., she paused the footage and offered the phone to Robin, pointing at the screen. "See? Right there. There's Pat stuffing the towel in the mailbox," Jean told Robin. Robin took the phone and zoomed in on the image. "That's not Pat, Jean. That's Connor." Robin rewound and rewatched the footage 3 times to be sure. "What?" No, that can't be Connor. Jean was amazed. Robin handed the phone back to her. Yeah, it sure as hell is Connor. I told you, he looks real bad. He's wearing the same thing I saw him wearing last night when I almost hit him on his bike, Robin told Jean. Jean rewatched the footage again. Oh my God, Jean cried. That is Connor. Holy mackerel. He could be his father's twin. Jean squinted her eyes and zoomed in on the image. Robin, oh my God. Jean's mouth hung open as she noticed something else about the image. Robin, he's wearing boots. The foot I saw slipping behind the Clark's place was wearing boots, and look. Robin was now perched, looking over Jean's shoulder. Jean paused the footage just moments before the footage cut out at 9 a.m. Look, he's doing something on his phone just before the footage cuts out. Could he be hacking the camera from his phone? Do you think Connor could be the one that's doing this to me? Jean was confused, and Robin was just shaking his head. If he had gotten access to the program somehow and had the app on his phone, who knows? I don't know enough about it, but it's probably possible. I don't know. Connor never bothered us before, but who knows what's going on with him these days? Drugs, maybe? Look at him. Robin was irritated, and Jean looked scared. Why would Connor do something like this? What happened to that kid? Jean was on the verge of tears. Robin kissed her cheek and took the phone from her hands, sitting it on the table. Babe, I don't know, but I'll go down and see if Pat's around later. I don't know, Rob. I think I just want to wait and see if it's going to stop now, and if it doesn't, just let the cops take care of it. Jean picked her phone back up off the table and saved the clip of Connor at the mailbox. I'll email this to that cop. I think there's an email address on the business card she gave me. Jean got up and went to find the business card secured to the refrigerator with a magnet. Yeah, right here. I'll email her. Can you please take care of the poop at the door? Jean asked Robin as she emailed the clip to Officer Stone directly from her phone. Yeah. Robin fished around in a cabinet for a plastic bag to use to pick up the poop and headed to the front door. Maybe Gertrude will see me out in my sweats and call the cops to let them know, Robin joked. Jean headed for the stairs. I'm going to jump in the shower and get dressed and then look at that painting again, she told Robin as she passed him at the front door. As he opened the door, Joan was just walking up the front steps. She was wearing the same thing she'd been wearing the night before. Jean caught a glimpse of Joan and ran up the stairs and stood just around the corner at the top, listening. Robin left the door open behind him so she could hear. Joan, I told you to call first, Robin said flatly. What's this Joan garbage, Robbie? Call me Mom or nothing at all. Nothing at all. You have 5 minutes to leave before I call the police. Robin slipped the plastic bag over his hand and bent over to pick up the now solid pile of feces. Jean almost squealed with delight at the sound of Robin calling his mother by her first name. Don't be ridiculous, Robbie, Joan protested. Ridiculous? Robin began. Ridiculous is coming home after a 3-week trip overseas and having to fight with my mother just to be able to spend time with my wife. I told you, there's nothing wrong with Jean. Everything here is fine. I've just been traveling and I'm tired and I want to rest and spend some time with my wife and I will call you later. What are you doing here this early on a Saturday anyway? Did you stay over at Gertrude's? You're wearing the same thing you were wearing last night. Robin took a deep breath and stared at his mother, whose face was crumpling before him. It's none of your business where I slept, and you're wearing the same thing you were wearing last night, too, Joan said stupidly. That's because it's 10:30 in the morning, and I'm in my home, and these are my pajamas. Robin tied a knot in the top of the bag of poop and let it dangle at his side while he considered the woman standing in front of him. Robbie, honey, I just have been so worried about you is all. Joan tried to will herself to cry, but the tears wouldn't come. She settled for furrowing her brow and pouting her lips as hard as she could. Is an old crocodile too dehydrated from a night of drinking to even force one tear? Robin's words cut sharply. Even Jean winced at the top of the stairs. She could only imagine the face Joan must be making. Then she remembered she could watch from the camera's app on her phone. She tiptoed down to the bedroom and tucked her feet under her as she sat on an unmade bed and watched her husband deal with his mother. Joan looked pretty rough, like she hadn't slept at all, and her eye makeup was smeared under her eyes. Though not a regular occurrence, it wasn't unusual for Joan to spend the night at Gertrude's. The way the two women were with each other, Jean sometimes wondered if maybe they were a little more than friends. It would explain some things. But then Jean always told herself that sounded too crazy to be true and reasoned with herself that Joan just really liked being able to harass them from close proximity. Through the lens of the security camera, Jean thought Joan's makeup looked like it was smeared from kissing. It wasn't just her eye makeup that was smudgy. There was lipstick smeared a bit on her cheek as well. Joan stepped a little closer to Robin and poked her son in the chest with her middle and index fingers. Now you listen to me, mister. I endured 19 and a half hours of labor bringing you into this world. I'm allowed to worry about you. Joan, no one is telling you you're not allowed to worry about me. It's just that your worry is unreasonable. There is nothing wrong in my home other than you being a pain in my ass. Other than that, Jean and I are both healthy and happy. Now take your damn drama and go home or back over to Gertrude's or anywhere but here right now. Robin extended the bag of poop towards his huffing mother, who looked like she was ready to explode. And drop this in the trash can at the end of the driveway on your way out. Joan didn't take the bag, so Robin dropped it on her foot and turned in the house, locking the door behind him. Jean watched on the camera as Joan kicked the bag into the front yard and stomped to her car that was parked in front of the house. Jean looked up to see Robin coming in the door. He walked past her and into the bathroom where he washed his hands and brushed his teeth. Jean put her phone on the nightstand beside her and watched him from her seat on the bed. Robin dried his hands and face with a hand towel and flopped on the bed next to Jean, burying his face in her lap. Jean ran her fingers through the hair on the back of his head and trailed down the nape of his neck. He turned his face to look up at her and surprised Jean. Robin was crying. I don't know what's wrong with her. I don't know why she can't respect any boundary, Robin almost whispered. Jean brushed a towel fuzz away from his eye and caressed his cheek. I don't either, but I'm glad we can finally agree that something is wrong with her, Jean said with earnestness to Robin. I guess I just don't like to think about it. I mean, if there's something wrong with her, like she's actually sick in the head, there might be something wrong with me too, Robin confided. Jean shook her head at him and continued to gently brush her hands over his cheeks. No, you're much more like your father. You look like him and everything. Your mom just has a horrible personality, Jean assured him. Great, so I'm like my dad. Maybe I'll die by the time I'm 60 and be out of everyone's hair. Robin turned his face and rested his cheek on Jean's thigh. Jean bent forward and kissed her husband on the exposed cheek. She could taste his tears. No, I'm sure your dad died because of something he was exposed to at work. You and I are going to get old and gray together. But Robin didn't look convinced. He sat up and leaned towards Jean, who leaned into him as well. Her head settled on Robin's shoulder. So what are you going to say to her later, she asked him. I don't think I'm going to call her, not after that, Robin replied. It's up to you, but you know, she's going to just keep trying if you don't. Hey, I want to ask you something, Jean said hesitantly. What's that? It's about your mom. What? Well, your mom and Gertrude spend a whole lot of time together and what? Robin was now facing his wife. Jean turned to look at him. And sometimes the way they are with each other, and I don't know, sometimes the way your mom is about Gertrude. Do you ever wonder? Wonder what? Robin looked confused. Jean finally spit it out. Do you ever wonder if they're more than friends? What, like lovers? Robin asked. Yeah. Sort of. They act like they're an old married couple. Your mom is like the husband, and Gertrude is like the wife. Robin looked up, thinking about what Jean had just said to him. I don't know. I guess I never thought of my mom that way. What way? Gay? No. Well, yeah, but not just gay. I've never really thought of my mom as someone who would need anyone else after my dad died. I guess I never considered she might need romance in her life. Well, as unhuman as she seems most of the time, your mom is still a human being, Rob. Human beings need love. But you're probably right. I can't imagine Gertrude and your mom kissing, but who knows? Stranger things have happened. Robin made a face like he had just smelled a bad fart. Yuck. I'd rather not imagine my mom kissing anyone. It's just too weird. Robin laid back on Jean's pillow. Jean got up and walked to her side of the closet and opened the door. Yeah, it is kind of strange thinking of your mom being affectionate with anyone. Jean pulled a plush tracksuit out of the closet and tossed it on the bed, then went to the dresser and dug out a tank top, panties, and socks and tossed them on the bed too. Just as she was about to turn on the shower, the landline rang. Robin answered it. Yes? This is Robin Randall. Robin paused. Jean listened. Yes? I was at LAX yesterday. He paused again. Wait, what? No, I didn't lose my wallet. I have it right here. Robin picked up his wallet from the dresser and started to thumb through it, looking to see if anything was missing. Everything seemed to be in its place. Oh, no. Someone must have picked that up. I did drop a ticket somewhere between terminals. What would someone want with my used ticket? That's strange. Robin returned his wallet to the dresser as he listened to the person on the other end. Jean turned on the water to heat up, then stood in the doorway to hear the end of the conversation. Robin looked amused as he spoke. Well, I hope you find who that wallet belongs to. Mine's here, and I have no idea why anyone would have hung on to my ticket. Thanks anyway. Robin hung up the phone and looked up at Jean, who was now naked except for her slippers. Well, hey there, naked lady. That was a strange call. Jean smiled and shook her boobs at Robin. Yeah? What was it all about? Someone had your plane ticket? Robin got up and gave Jean's boobs a squeeze and her bum a light spank. Yeah, I dropped a used ticket somewhere between terminals at LAX, and someone evidently picked it up and stuffed it in their wallet, then lost their wallet. That was someone from the airport calling to see if I had my wallet. I guess there was no other ID. I should have said it was mine. Maybe there was some money in it. Money, but no ID and your plane ticket? That is strange, Jean said as she stepped into the hot shower. They were calling from the airport? She asked over the sound of the water. Robin was peeing, seat down, next to the shower. If you have the seat down, be sure to wipe off any tinkle sprinkle you leave, Jean instructed. How do you know that? He asked her. Because we've known each other a very long time now, Jean reminded him. Yeah, I just assumed they were calling from the airport. I don't know. Maybe it was some schmuck who found the lost wallet and was trying to find who it belonged to. I'll look at the caller ID. You answered without looking at the caller ID? What if it had been your mother? Jean ridiculed. Yeah, well, it wasn't. Hold on. Robin looked at the caller ID and saw the number had come up as unknown. It came up unknown, he told Jean over the sound of the water. Well, that could have been anyone. How'd they find you? Jean wondered. The ticket had my name on it. Were listed. I'm sure all they had to do was a Google search, Robin reasoned. Jean turned off the water. Leave the water running. I'm going to shower again. It feels good to shower in my own shower with my own soap. Besides, I need to wash my mother off of me. Robin called to Jean in the bathroom. Jean turned the shower back on and started to pat herself dry with a towel. Did she touch you or something? She asked. She'd want to shower too if Joan had touched her. Nah, Robin replied. Just being in her presence was enough to make me feel soiled. Soiled? That's a good word for how she makes a person feel. Soiled. Jean repeated the word back to herself and wrapped up in the towel just as Robin squeezed past her and stepped naked into the shower behind her. Jean pinched his left bum cheek and giggled. Your mom's a piece of work, but she made a nice piece of ass, Jean joked. Robin pretended to be offended. Hey, I feel violated, he laughed as he soaked himself up into a lather. Jean pulled on her clothes and dried her hair, then stuffed her feet into her slippers and disappeared into her painting studio before Robin was done in the shower. In the midday sunlight, the painting looked a lot different. The figures were going to need a little more work. What had seemed like enough contrast late in the evening before, while the paint was still fresh, now seemed much too flat to Jean. She extended her right index finger to test the texture of the paint. It was still tacky. She'd have to be careful working back into it with fresh paint. She squeezed a few colors onto her palette, then added some additional dry pigments and linseed oil. Once the dry material was totally mixed in with the wet ones, she added a touch of solvent to help it dry a bit faster. Robin lightly knocked, then opened the door just as Jean was finishing the last couple brush strokes. Ah, not done, I see. No, things always look different in the morning. What about the afternoon? It's almost 2 p.m. Robin stood at his wife's side and wrapped his arm around her shoulder. When you're done here, how about we go out and pick up a couple of groceries, he asked. It would be nice to be out and about with her. Robin enjoyed traveling, meeting new people, and experiencing other cultures, but coming home was always his favorite part. Jean looked up at her husband as he considered her painting. Yeah, I'm done for now. I just need to clean out the brush and cover the paint. Okay, meet you downstairs when you're ready. Robin gave Jean's shoulders a little squeeze and kissed her above her ear before leaving the room and heading down the stairs. Jean cleaned her brush and solvent and set it aside to dry, then covered the unused paint with plastic wrap and dumped the used solvent in the sealed solvent and paint disposal can. Then she washed her hands, stuffed her feet into a pair of flip-flops, and grabbed her purse. Peeking out the window in the bathroom, she saw Robin drop a bag of poop in the empty trash can at the foot of the driveway, then drag the otherwise empty cans back up to the house. When Jean came down the stairs, Robin was headed to the kitchen to wash his hands. Gertrude is down there in her yard, talking to old Pat, Robin informed Jean. What? I haven't seen Pat talk to anyone in at least 3 years. The last time I saw him talking to anyone in the street, it was when he had that power outage when the tornado took out the junction box down on John R. Did she see you? Jean went to the front window to look down the street. Are you sure that's Pat and not Connor? She said to Robin, who was looking over her shoulder out the window and drying his hands on his thighs. Yeah, it's Pat all right. He's actually a little beefier than Connor is these days. Gertrude was standing in her roses in one of her horrid moo-moos while Pat was shaking his finger at her angrily from the sidewalk. Shit, I wish I were a beetle on those roses right now, Jean said to Robin. Don't you know it? Thank God my mother seems to have gone home. Whatever is going on down there, she'd only make worse, I'm sure. Yeah, well, let's get going. I don't want to waste any more energy on this today. Let's go. Jean slung her purse over her shoulder and motioned to Robin to follow her to the door. Robin dropped the curtain and produced his keys from his pocket. When they got out to the car, they could hear Gertrude yelling at Pat. I told you, I don't know where that idiot boy of yours is. Last I saw him was 2 days ago when I paid him for taking my trash out and mowing the lawn. It was obvious that Pat didn't believe her. I don't know what all he does down here for you, but just do this for me. Leave my boy alone. Something isn't right and you're not his mother. You're not even a fraction of the woman my Gloria was. Pat's voice was shaking with anger. Robin turned to Jean. Think I should go see what's going on down there? He asked her. Jean didn't take her eyes off the scene in the roses. No, she'll just tell your mother, and then who knows what fresh hell that will unleash, Jean reasoned, then turned and got into the passenger side of the Grand Cherokee. It still faintly smelled like the takeout from the night before. Robin hopped in the driver's seat. Yeah, you're probably right. Now why don't you make a quick list while we're on our way? Robin suggested as he backed out of the driveway and down the street away from Gertrude and Pat and the roses. A couple blocks away, Connor was on the corner with yet a different bike, talking to a couple boys 5 or 6 years younger than him. Robin pulled up next to them and rolled down Jean's window. Connor looked startled as he looked over at Jean. Jean was astonished. Robin was right. Connor looked just awful. The other 2 boys took off running. Robin spoke to Connor from behind Jean. Connor, dude, you better go home. Your dad's looking for you down at Gertrude's, and it looked like they were ready to duke it out down there. Whatever, man, was all Connor said, but he did hop on the bike and head in the direction of his house. You're right. He looks like he could drop dead at any minute. It's got to be drugs, Jean said, watching Connor disappear behind them in the car's mirror. Who knows? Probably, was all Robin replied. Jean opened her grocery list app on her phone and started to check items off. The kitchen was pretty empty. She had only gone to the market once while Robin was gone. She had mostly gone out to eat or finished odds and ends of stuff in the pantry and freezer for the past 3 weeks. When she wasn't freaking out about the mystery door knocker, her new paintings had been consuming her. She really hoped Mort was going to show the new series this fall. It was what they had discussed after the last exhibition. This was the first time in years that she was including figures in her compositions. Morton had been pretty successful selling the abstracts and the bright palette that she had been doing for the past decade. It might be hard convincing him to show the new work. It was so very different from the other works she made. Sure, there were thematic and compositional continuities, but the new work just looked so different. She liked it, but she wasn't sure Morton and her collectors were going to feel the same way. Collectors could be so fickle. Chapter 7. A Hard Woman. Dursick thought Robin sounded pretty harmless. He checked his wristwatch as he hung up the phone. The antique kept better time than his cell phone. If he were still alive, Dursick's father would have been impressed that he still had the watch in his possession after all these years. The gold and onyx timepiece had been in Dursick's family for 3 generations now. A wristwatch that old was rare. Once, shortly after coming to the U.S., he had lost it when a business deal went sour, but the men who took it from him had soon regretted their terrible mistake. A few days later, Dursick had run into the guy who had actually taken it off his wrist in a card room. Dursick cut the entire hand off to retrieve his heirloom and send a message. The guy survived and wore a leather sleeve over the stump of his left wrist ever since, and everyone started calling him Lefty. Dursick gave Lefty credit for not snitching about how he lost the hand. It had taken Dursick a month to clean and recalibrate the timepiece, but Dursick was both skilled and patient, and the piece now ran better than ever. His father had been a master watchmaker in the old country. Dursick had learned a lot by watching, and what he hadn't learned by watching, he taught himself by reading and doing. It was just after 9 a.m. Sylvie was going to be relieved by his findings. He didn't expect further action on this Robin Randall matter. Unless he was some super-secret government agent, Robin checked out to simply be some schmo selling car parts, not a cop or a fellow good fella or anything like that. Robin Randall was just some average, middle-aged jerk living a boring Midwestern life with his average wife. He did have a second cousin doing time for embezzlement in upstate New York, but as far as Dursick had been able to dig, Robin hadn't seen or spoken to his cousin since they were kids, and besides, it had turned out Garrett Randall was no career criminal. He was just some sorry-ass fuck whose wife had gotten sick with a rare disorder and needed to pay doctor bills. It was hard to even call him greedy. Dursick dialed Sylvie's private bedroom line. It rang 6 times, and she still didn't answer. Dursick hung up the phone, furrowed his brow, and pursed his lips. Something wasn't right. He had known Sylvie and Big Mo since he had come to the States 50 years ago, and he was Little Mo's godfather. Sylvie was a morning bird. She had a routine. There was no good reason for her to not answer that phone, even if she was using the toilet. She had a phone in there, too. Dursick had installed it himself last year when Sylvie had her hip replaced. He brushed his teeth and ran a comb over his head and hopped in his charger. On the way to Sylvie's, Dursick pulled through a drive-through coffee stand. He ordered a black coffee for himself and a latte for Sylvie and placed both the drinks in his console cup holders. He didn't understand why Sylvie didn't just divorce Big Mo. He wasn't getting out. She never went to see him, and as far as Dursick knew, they didn't write or call each other. Little Mo had been Sylvie's business partner since before Big Mo went away, and Big Mo's business was now pretty much confined to the inside. Dursick heard bits and pieces from time to time about it on the street, and once he had helped procure a certain item Big Mo was looking for, but other than that, Big Mo's dealings were all inside. Dursick watched as Little Mo grew up and knew Big Mo had no use for the kid from the start. Big Mo was like that. He decided in the first 3 minutes of meeting a person whether or not he liked them, and if he didn't like you, there was no changing his mind. Dursick had been at the hospital when Sylvie was in labor. He had driven her because Big Mo had been in a business meeting. Big Mo arrived at the hospital just a few minutes before Little Mo popped out. Mo was in the room with Sylvie, not even 30 minutes after the birth. Then Dursick watched him walk past the waiting room and down the hall shaking his head. Dursick had gone back to the room and poked his head in the door. He found Sylvie holding the newborn, crying, while the nurse looked on in disbelief. When Sylvie looked up and saw Dursick standing in the door, she began a fresh round of sobs and exclaimed, "He said he doesn't like him. How can he not like him? He just came out of me." Dursick had gone to Sylvie's side and had been her right-hand man ever since. Though you wouldn't know it to look at her now, back then Sylvie had been a real looker. Over the years, Big Mo had made off-color comments in Dursick's presence about Dursick's relationship with Sylvie, but in reality, to this day, there had never been anything physical between Dursick and Sylvie. Little Mo had been a sweet baby and a smart little kid. Big Mo had turned him into what he was now. He had chipped away at him little by little every day, and when he wasn't chipping at him, he had beaten him. Little Mo was the way he was for a reason. It bothered Dursick, but he never said anything about it. He just stuck by Sylvie no matter what. She had never cheated him out of payment for any job. She had always been upfront with him. She had always trusted him, and Dursick liked when people trusted him. Dursick's first name was Yaramir, but there had been another Yaramir on the scene when he first came over, so he went by his surname, and that had never changed. Dursick didn't really remember how he had gotten into this line of work. It just happened along the way as a means of survival. Fixing watches never made him enough to live on, and a man needed to eat. Nazis or Russians had killed his mother and father. He didn't know which for sure. Only a couple folks who stayed in the old village had survived, and he had never spoken to any of them personally. He had been very young and escaped Slovakia with a neighbor to Great Britain early on. He remembered his father slipping the watch off his wrist and sewing it into the inside of Dursick's coat before helping the boy put the coat on and shoving all the cash he had in the house into the neighbor's hand. It was the middle of the night, and the neighbor only had enough room for the child in the automobile. Dursick's mother had kissed him and cried. He never saw them again. He was 7 when he last saw his parents. He was 32 and already in business when he met the Statue of Liberty. It was 1970. A friend of a friend introduced him to Sylvie and Big Mo. They were close to the same age, had people from a village that neighbored the village where Dursick had been born, and had a room for rent real cheap. Dursick had lived with Sylvie and Big Mo for a year until he was making enough for his own place. He had done jobs with Big Mo off and on early in his U.S. career, but it wasn't until after Big Mo went to prison that he pretty much began to work exclusively for Sylvie. She was a hard woman, and they didn't make them like her anymore. He trusted her implicitly, and she trusted him. As he turned into Sylvie's driveway, everything looked to be in order from the front of the house. Dursick turned off the engine and grabbed both caffeinated beverages and mounted the front steps. He could hear Sylvie barking at her son and felt a wave of relief, so she just hadn't heard the phone ring when he called earlier. Using a crooked pinky, Dursick rang the doorbell. He had a key, but he tried to be polite when Little Mo was home. Once he rang the bell, the interior of the house fell silent. After a couple minutes, the door opened, and Little Mo was holding his gun in his right hand by his side and ushering Dursick in with his left hand urgently. "It's just Dursick," Mo called over his shoulder, then closed the front door and turned back to speak directly to Dursick. "Where the fuck have you been, man?" Mo asked frantically. "What are you talking about? It's hardly 10 a.m., and I only came over because Sylv didn't answer the phone when I called. What's going on?" Dursick answered. "Well, whatever, just get in here." Mo turned towards the kitchen and motioned for Dursick to follow him. In the kitchen, Dursick saw Sylvie in her ugly old bathrobe and slippers, cigarette in one hand and the other hand on her hip, tapping her foot in front of some Asian-looking kid taped to a chair. So he had been right after all. Something was amiss. Dursick cleared his throat. "And what do we have here?" he asked Sylvie as he handed her the drink he brought her. She took it and nodded, bringing the cup to her lips to take a sip. "Thank God for you," she said to Dursick. "We have a big mess. This is Max. He's here for the statues." Sylvie glared at Mo as she sipped the latte and took a drag off her cigarette. "I thought the statues were for the shop display," Dursick said, eyeing Max, his restraints in condition. The kid's face, neck, and chest were marked with significant amounts of dried blood. His mouth was covered in duct tape that looked as though it had been applied and reapplied a few times, and it smelled like he may have wet himself. He was taped to the kitchen island, the same way Big Mo used to do to Little Mo. Dursick wondered which one of them had done that to him, Sylvie or Mo. "Yeah, well, so did he." Sylvie nodded towards Mo, who was standing by the refrigerator looking bored. "Yeah, well, joke's on him, isn't it?" Mo replied blandly, "because we don't have any fucking statues." Max's eyes widened at this revelation. Up to this point, neither Mo or Sylvie had revealed the statues weren't actually there. Sylvie shook her head and sighed heavily, looking at her feet. She sat her latte down on the table and looked at Dursick as she spoke to her son. "Momo, get out of my sight and my house for the next 24 hours. I am too old for this shit, and you're still not old enough." Dursick nodded an almost imperceptible nod. He knew what she was saying. Mo began to protest. "What the fuck? What are you talking about? I live here. Where do you expect me to go?" Mo was whining like a spoiled child. Dursick answered him, "We don't care where you go. Just be gone for 24 hours. Mo stopped huffing immediately. Dursick almost never addressed him this way. He learned his lesson years ago when it came to Dursick. He used to think he and his mother were having an affair, but the last time he saw his father, Big Mo had explained it was more than that. He told Mo that Sylvie was, and always would be, Big Mo's wife, but Dursick and Sylvie were each other's family. Mo hadn't ever told anyone about that part of the conversation. He didn't know what it meant until a couple years ago when he saw his mother cry for the first time since he was a very little boy. Sylvie, Dursick, and Mo were sitting around the table eating some takeout. The news was on the TV, and the three were chatting casually, enjoying the meal. When someone speaking Russian, being interviewed by the newscaster, had begun speaking on the TV, Sylvie turned her head sharply towards the screen and paid attention. After a few minutes, tears began rolling down her cheeks silently, and her shoulders began to shake. Mo was confused. It was just some bullshit news story. Dursick had gotten up from his seat and knelt next to Sylvie, wrapping his arms around her shoulders. Sylvie had buried her face in his neck and wept until his shirt was wet around the neck and chest. Dursick had whispered to her in a language Mo didn't even recognize, and then to Mo's surprise, Sylvie had answered him in the same language and nodded her head in agreement. Dursick had smoothed the hair from around her face and brought her a clean, damp rag from her private bathroom upstairs. Then he turned off the TV, and they resumed eating as if nothing had happened. Mohan still didn't know why the Russian annexing of Crimea made his mother cry, but he understood then what his father had said to him years before about Dursick and Sylvie being family. Mohan stuffed his gun in the back of his pants and stomped up the stairs. "Fine, just let me grab a few things and I'll be gone," he said, looking at the floor. Sylvie sidled up to Dursick, and the two sipped their coffee and stared at Max, who now had eyes wide and full of fear. Once they heard Mo's car leave the driveway, Sylvie spoke to Dursick, never taking her eyes off Max. "Mo made the deal without even getting a deposit. This fuck showed up not long after you left yesterday to collect, and guess what?" Sylvie gave Dursick time to reply. "Max forgot his checkbook," Dursick responded. "Yeah, something like that. We went through his pockets this morning and found nothing. Who taped him to the island like that?" "What? Who taped the jerk up? You or Mohan?" "I did. What's that matter?" "Oh, it doesn't matter. I was just curious." Dursick started to peel the tape from Max's mouth. Max began to speak. "Hey, look, no one said anything to me about any money. I was just here to get the statues," he tried to explain to Dursick. Dursick just smiled. Just coming to pick up the statues, is that all, and then be on your way?" he asked Max rhetorically. Dursick put the tape back over Max's mouth and turned to Sylvie. "Did he come through the front door?" "Of course not." Sylvie grabbed a piece of rope from the back garden wall where it now sat on the counter and tossed it to Dursick. "He came over the wall." Klein and Kinney stopped him. At the sound of their names, the dogs got up from their napping spot and came into the room awaiting instruction. Dursick rubbed Klein's ears. "That's okay, boys. You can go lay down," he told the dogs, and they obeyed. Dursick approached Sylvie and placed a hand on either shoulder, stooping down slightly to look directly in her eyes as he spoke to her. "Mohan really fucked up this time, Sylv." Sylvie didn't even blink. She grit her teeth before she replied, "I know. I don't know who I want dead more, him or Max." Dursick chuckled. "I can take care of both if you like." Sylvie laughed in a mocking kind of way. "I just might take you up on that. But for now, we need to figure out what to do with our friend Max here. I still haven't found out who his associates are or exactly what's in those ugly little statues, and they still haven't been delivered yet." Sylvie looked over at Max, who was sweating. Dursick stepped back from Sylvie and stood over Max. "I'll find out. Go upstairs and take a shower and get dressed. When you come down, I'll have the information you want," Dursick stated with absolute certainty. Sylvie sighed with relief and pat Dursick on the shoulder and left him alone with the boy. Sylvie turned on her shower as hot as she could, then turned on her CD player. She didn't know what it was about Kenny G, but that saxophone always relaxed her. When she came back downstairs, Max was passed out with a bandaged hand, a pinky finger was in a baggie with ice on the table, and Dursick was washing his hands. "So?" Sylvie looked at each item, then settled her gaze on Dursick. "So our little friend here works with a bunch of people, but this job is North Korean. The girl, incidentally, was a spy. She was going to steal the statues from you before you left the airport. You're probably lucky they picked her up. She wasn't the girl Mo actually bought. She was the daughter of one of their top guys over there. They aren't going to give a shit about Max here, but if the statues don't show up today like they're supposed to, there's probably not much we can do to keep Mo safe this time." Dursick took out his lighter and lit the cigarette. Sylvie put between her lips. Sylvie took a drag and exhaled. "Well, that doesn't make me happy, but this one's entirely on Mo this time." "Yes, it is, Sylv. Yes, it is. You in the mood for some good news?" "Good news?" Sylvie asked incredulously. "Yeah, good news. Sure. The doughy oaf? The one from the plane? Robin Randall?" "Yeah, what'd you find?" "He's just some average asshole. I've been doing this a long time, Sylv, and if that guy has anything to do with anything, he's a fucking kingpin like we've never seen before." "Well, you can never be too sure. What'd you learn?" "He works for some small automotive part manufacturer outside of Detroit. He's married, no kids, and his mother's a widow about 15 years younger than you. He plays racquetball a couple times a week and has no connections to anyone anywhere except a cousin doing time in upstate New York. But even that is a nothing rap, and the two haven't seen each other since they were kids. It's just freak luck that he got your seat on the plane." "Yeah, well, I still might ask you to take a trip, and who knows, maybe I'll join you to get out of town for a while. What are we going to do with Max here?" Dursick took Sylvie's hand. "We're going to wait a couple hours and see if the package shows up. Then I'm going to arrange a meeting. Mo's probably going to have to cut his losses on this one. Sylvie shrugged. I don't care. As long as this fuck here's out of my house and I never have to see those and I never have to see the statues again, and I don't have Korean goons breathing down my neck. Dursick started to lean forward to kiss Sylvie on the cheek, but caught himself and pulled away just as there was a knock at the door. Really, Sylv, you should consider putting in one of those home cameras at the door so you can see who is there without pressing your face to the peephole. One of these days you're going to get shot in the face. Dursick turned to go get the door. Dursick squinted through the peephole. It was a delivery man with a beat-up-looking truck and overstarched uniform. He had a box by his side that was big enough to contain a suitcase. Dursick smoothed his shirt and opened the door with a smile. And counting pages. 4 more pages. I have a package for Mrs. Sylvie Wolenzik. A man about Little Mo's age stated matter-of-factly. Dursick nodded. Yes, I'll sign. Dursick took the stylus from the delivery man's outstretched hand and signed his Mickey Mouse name, John Stanley, on the electronic screen. Thank you, have a nice day, the man said as he pushed the box toward Dursick, standing in the doorway. Dursick bent over and picked up the surprisingly heavy box and brought it into the foyer, closing the door behind him. Sylvie came out and met him. Open it right here, she told Dursick, handing him a utility knife. He took the knife from her and sliced down the long corner of the box and across the top. Sylvie pulled at the bubble wrap and paper that had been wrapped around the suitcase, and Dursick laid it flat on the floor. Sylvie removed the lock and slid the zipper open, throwing back the lid, and gasped. The suitcase was stuffed with mud bricks and straw. Her clothes and the statues were gone. Well, what the fuck are we going to do now, Vortaka? Sylvie covered her face. Dursick put his arm around her shoulder. It's okay, Fene. Dursick will take care of it. But I can't make promises about Momo. Not this time. I'm too old, and Max in there is disposable to these guys. They'll probably kill him just to cover their tracks. Did he tell you that? Sylvie nodded toward the kitchen where Max was starting to stir. Not in so many words. It was what his eyes told me, not his mouth. He was grateful when I told him I was only taking a finger. Sylvie's cell phone began to ring in her robe pocket. She startled at the sound and looked at the screen. The number came up unknown. Answer it, Dursick instructed. She did. Hola! Sylvie always answered the phone in Spanish when she didn't recognize the number or a call came in as unknown. Madame Wolenzik, we know what happened. We have the merchandise. Our man just returned your suitcase. You and your Mr. Stanley can return the boy, in whatever shape he is in 1 hour to the address you will find on a piece of yellow-lined paper in the front zipper pocket. If you get him here before we find Mohan, we will spare Mohan's life. But Mohan is to never do business in this town again. For you or anyone else, we don't care if a mother keeps her son. But if he is to ever be a man, you would be wise to tell him to move away. Far away. I hear you can buy property real cheap in Detroit. And the man on the line hung up. Sylvie dropped the phone and stared at Dursick. They have the statues. They delivered the bag. They want Max back. If we get him back to them before they find Mo, they're going to let him live, Sylvie spat. Well, that's far more compassionate than I was expecting, Dursick replied. They said Mo can't work here anymore. They said we should move, Sylvie added. Not a bad idea. He's too old to be living with his mommy anymore anyway. Dursick, they knew he's my son. Sylvie, everyone knows he's your son. He looks just like you. Half the town thinks he's my son as well. Dursick looked at Sylvie with pity. Sylvie shook her head to get some clarity. The address where we were supposed to drop him is in the front pocket of the bag. I'm showered, just not dressed. Let me throw something on while you get Max into the back of my Kia in the garage. Here's the key. Put your car in the garage. Sylvie handed her keys to Dursick, who just nodded and turned to take care of business. Sylvie ran up the stairs as fast as she could. Dursick sauntered into the kitchen, eyeing Max, who was awake once again and groaning slightly, looking at his bandaged hand. Your people just called, he told the boy. Max looked up at him with fear. Yeah, that's what I thought. They're meaner than me, aren't they? Dursick questioned. Max shook his head. Yes, fervently. I'm sorry, but we have to give you back, and if we do so in a timely manner, Mo gets to live. So this is what's going to happen. I'm going to cut you from the island there and take you and put you in the trunk of Madame's car. I have your finger here on ice. They might be able to put it back on for you if they let you live. You're not going to fight me, because if you do, I'm going to cut off your balls, and those can't be put back on. Do you understand? Dursick explained without emotion. Max shook his head in agreement. Dursick disappeared for a couple minutes into the garage, where he put down an old blanket in the trunk of the Kia. Then he pulled out a utility knife Sylvie had handed him earlier from his back pocket and went back into the kitchen and cut the duct tape securing Max to the kitchen island. It was a good thing Max wasn't that big of a kid. He weighed about as much as the suitcase of bricks had. Dursick tossed him over the shoulder and wrinkled his face at the smell of now-dried urine on the boy's pants so close to his face. He situated Max in the trunk with the baggie with his finger and closed the trunk, then went to a cupboard over a workbench and chose a set of out-of-state license plates and covered the front and back plates of the car just as Sylvie stepped into the garage, closing the door into the house behind her. Good thinking. We don't need anyone following us that easy. Sylvie patted Dursick on the shoulder. Dursick dug in his pocket and tossed his keys at her. You go out and move my car in while I back this one out, then let's go. I know the address. It's about 25 minutes drive from here. Sylvie caught the keys and nodded. She always impressed Dursick. At her age, she was still sharp as a tack and harder than most of the men he dealt with on a regular basis. Sylvie backed the Charger out of the driveway and waited for Dursick to pull the Kia out and idle at the curb. Then she backed the Charger into the garage, locked it, then closed the garage with the exterior keypad before getting in the passenger seat of the Kia next to Dursick. Max was silent. Do you have a hand wipe or something in that bag of yours? I have piss stink on my shoulder. Sylvie dug through a garish quilted monstrosity of a bag and produced a package of lavender-scented hand wipes. She pulled one out and handed it to Dursick, who wiped his shoulder while he drove and looked at the road. Thanks, he said as he used the wipe. Thanks, he said as he handed the used wipe back to her and fumbled with the radio. So, are they going to meet us, do you think? Sylvie asked. No. Dursick pulled the folded paper from his shirt pocket and handed it to Sylvie. Under the address are some instructions. The place is an old warehouse. Most likely kitchenwares and massage workers come through there. There's an alley in the back with a loading dock. We're supposed to leave him on the loading dock and leave, Dursick said. Sylvie pulled her pearl-handled pistol from her bag, just enough for Dursick to see she had it. I've got your back, she told him. I know, was all Dursick replied. They rode the rest of the way without speaking, listening to some idiot's podcast talking about martial arts and how many injections the Kardashian family had in their asses and faces. When they pulled into the alley, Dursick looked at Sylvie. Don't get out of the car unless they shoot. If they hit me and I go down, just leave me and get the hell out of here. Max is more scared of them than he is of me. Sylvie just nodded. Dursick backed the vehicle up near the dock and popped the trunk. When he got out, leaving the engine running and the driver door open, he took a quick glance around and saw another kid behind a dumpster watching and a guy in an overhead window. He picked up Max and laid him on the dock, then grabbed the bag with his finger and sat it on top of the boy's chest. Then he got in the car quickly and closed the door. When they were a couple miles away, Dursick pulled under an overpass, removed the fake plates, and tossed them down a gutter. He was using a hanky to wipe his hands as he returned to the Kia. I've been thinking, Sylvie began. Yeah, it's good someone does that from time to time, Dursick joked. No, I'm serious. I'm sick of L.A. I'm sick of the high rent and shitty people. Sylvie was nodding, her head up and down as she spoke. Dursick started the car and pulled back onto the boulevard. They're right. I heard you can buy a huge place in Detroit for just a few $1,000s, and I have a couple contacts there. We could all move to Detroit and set up shop there pretty easily. I wonder if they got Mo or not. Sylvie was fishing in her bag for her cell phone. Dursick glanced at her out of the corner of his eye. She was serious. Are you asking me to move in with you, old woman? Sylvie began to laugh hysterically. Well, you old fart, I guess I am. You can have your own room. You don't have to sleep with me. A tear welled up in the corner of Dursick's left eye, but he willed his eyeball to suck it back in. Sylvie, after all these years, I'd be honored to live with you. Sylvie pretended she didn't hear him. While she dialed Mo's cell number, he answered. It's Mom, Momo. Meet us at home in an hour. Okay, was all Mohan replied. Sylvie hung up and patted Dursick on the knee. I guess we all have a little packing to do. I don't have much, Dursick said. Well, I don't either, Sylvie answered. What a story. What's going to happen next? Guess you have to wait and see.